In this lesson, we're going to be adding reflections and glow for some of our elements. Okay, so one of the reflections we need to add is reflection for our background particles. So let's go ahead and grab those background particles that we have there. We're going to duplicate that layer by hitting Control D. And I think we probably need to move both of these up because we've kind of got this horizon line that we know is going to be farther in the background just because of the direction that our particles that are laying on the ground are going. So I've moved one of those up. I'm going to grab the other one and it's going to be moved down. So I want them to kind of coincide on where one ends, the other will begin. And we can do that just a little bit more efficiently using a guide. So come over here to your title action safe and turn on your rulers and just draw a guide down to the bottom of that top layer. And then we'll grab our bottom one and just pull that just right below that guide. And maybe even give yourself a few pixels of breathing room there between those. Okay, so now I'm going to turn off that guide because we don't really need it anymore. That was just really quick. So we'll just turn off rulers, turn off guides, just like that. Okay, so now we need to actually make this bottom layer a reflection. So go ahead, bring up your scale property. We'll turn off our link and turn that first value negative, so it's at a negative 100. Then we need to turn it all the way upside down. So grab that rotation tool, make sure you have that bottom layer selected, and we'll turn that upside down just like that. And now you can kind of see how those reflect each other. And you can really tell how well it works whenever you see one that goes right there and they pretty much just kind of fly into each other. So kind of interesting how that happens. But I do want to add some effects to the floor so that we've got just a little more obvious differentiation between this one is the reflection and this one is the real one. So grab that camera lens blur, we'll drop that on. And that's just going to blur the bottom just that little bit extra. If you want to, maybe turn that up to a 10 for the blur radius because we do want to see more of a difference because we weren't getting much there. And then let's also hit the T key and turn the opacity of that down to 25%. So it's very subtle since those are not really very obvious, but it is going to help just maintain that illusion that we do have a nice background that has some reflection on the floor. Okay, so now let's go ahead, we'll toggle that one up. And the next thing I want to do a reflection on is the mantra logo. So we've got our mantra logo image right here. Let's go ahead and duplicate that. I'm just going to hit Control D to duplicate it. And bring up your scale property. We'll toggle off that link, make it negative. And then let's just turn this upside down. Make sure that you have that mantra logo selected, the one that's negative. And I like to keep the negative one on the bottom just because it helps me keep everything a little more straight. And this one's tough because if we have this at the level that we need it to actually be something that can be seen, it's not really as true to life as where the rest of our floor is. So what I'm going to do is kind of pretend that this is maybe a little bit further back in space. So I'm going to turn this into a 3D layer. So go and toggle your switches on, turn it 3D, and we're going to grab our rotation tool and rotate it a little bit on that x-axis. So you're going to have this feeling that this one is a little bit more at an angle than the other ones. And it's just going to help make it a little bit more real looking. Now let's scrub this back just right where that kind of flare is and just right about there. I mean, very, very subtle. We'll go ahead and add our blur and our opacity change to this. So grab your camera lens blur, drop that on there. Maybe turn that one up a little bit as well to make it more blurry, just to a 10. And we'll turn this down on our opacity to 25%. So I just hit the T key to bring up that property. There we go. So that looks pretty good. I mean, it's not perfect on that reflection because it does look like it's a little bit higher at some points. but it's not terrible. So I'm okay with that being there and just feeling like it's a little bit further back. And if you needed to, you could always move the mantra logo up a bit in space, but I think it's okay where it's at. Okay, so now one other thing that I want to add some reflections to is the mantra logo type. So that kind of starts to appear here, and this is really where it's going to come to life. So let's grab that mantra. Let's also really quickly, before we finish this off, right click that, rename it, and we'll call this, we'll just add reflection onto the end of that name. Just like that. And then we'll come up here to mantra logo type. And this one is one that we're going to change as well. So we'll add that reflection by hitting Control D to duplicate it. Grab the bottom version of it, and we'll hit the S key to bring up our scale. Unlink that, turn it to a -100. And then you do need to turn it upside down. And then we'll just drag this to the bottom. Just like that. And I just kind of have it a little bit lower than the rest. Now this one, I want to treat just a little bit differently. I want it to almost kind of fade here at the bottom because I don't want to see that that is overlapping because that's not really true to life. So I'm going to add a mask to this one. So go ahead and come up here, grab your rectangle tool, and you can start really far away from that part of the logo, and then just kind of bring it in just like that, so we just have a bit of that showing. Then I'm going to turn up the feather of this, so let's just kind of feather this out a bit just so it kind of starts to come up there like that. And already that looks really nice, but we need to turn down the opacity and add our blur. So to your reflection, the one that has the mask, just drop on that camera lens blur and select your layer, hit the T key to bring up your transparency, and we'll take that down to 25%. And if you feel like that's not enough, you don't have to take it all the way down to 25 since this one is getting quite a bit of blur. Maybe 68 might be a little bit closer just so it looks pretty. You can still see that it's reflecting there. So it doesn't all have to be exactly the same. It just helps to maintain the consistency for the most part on some of those other things. Okay, let's also add reflection to the name of this bottom one. And then I also want to add some glow to my flare of my particle trail that we've created. So the particle stream, this pink, light pink layer, and the red layer. So let's come over here, and I'm going to type in glow to my effects and presets, and we'll add glow to those particles just like that. And you really you could add 2 glows if you wanted. If you really wanted them to be crazy, but then you would have to start color correcting them because they get really yellow on the edges. So I'm just going to add 1 glow effect just to add a little bit extra to that. And then we get that really nice orange at the end. Really, really looking pretty. Okay, so now that we've gone in and finished up adding the reflections and the glow, I'm ready to kind of just maybe come in here and adjust any timing we need to, and also animate these droplets. We've never gone back in and animated the drops. So I want to go ahead and do that and just figure out the timing of those, how it's appropriate with the rest of everything else that we've made. And then we'll be able to just kind of continue adding some of those finishing touches, because for the most part, we've gotten most of this animation done. Now it's just about adding that polish. So stick around, and we're going to animate our drops and any other timing issues we need to fix in our next lesson.